So Morley came up with this hypothesis that how amazing would it be if at the simple root cause of disease in our bodies could be our iron rusting? And he looked further into this and elucidated the physiology that goes on. And it turns out that he's onto something. And what that is that for our iron to be usable to take up oxygen, our body exerts a certain amount of energy to make it into the reduced form. So change it from iron 3 plus into iron 2 plus. And that takes energy, and energy called ATP in our body, it needs magnesium as a cofactor. So, this concept of iron deficiency is actually iron inefficiency because we are magnesium deficient. And then when you look back through history and you start to hear and research about healers, and you look into naturopathy and chiropractic and all of these alternative practices, the one supplement that they consistently recommend for people is magnesium. And the reason why is because it's the essential factor for our currency of energy production. So that was number one rule of the root cause protocol. Everyone is magnesium deficient, and there are so many symptoms of magnesium deficiency that we just think of as being tired. And that's the reason why, because we require energy to de-rust our iron and allow it to take oxygen around our body. And the other thing is not all magnesiums are created the same. If you go to the supermarket and purchase magnesium, you'll get a really good laxative. So, most people don't need, well, most people are full of shit, so it's probably a little bit helpful, but
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Truth That Heals podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez. And our next guest is coming all the way from the land down under, Australia. She is an ex-medical doctor and currently is working as a holistic transformational coach. I'm proud to present Dr. Jen Draper. Dr. Jen, welcome to the podcast.
thank you so much for inviting me, Ryan. I am very happy to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on my podcast. And I briefly just introduce the work that you do now with holistic transformational coaching. Can you walk us through what is it that you do?
Sure. So I help overextended high performers discover their unique human design so that they can breathe again, heal deeply, and move forward with soul-aligned action in clarity, not chaos. And that is exactly what I have done for myself over the last 18 months since I walked away from a successful medical career. And when I was at the end of my career, I used the title integrative doctor with a specialty in anti-aging medicine. So I had commenced my own clinical practice, and I called it Wingham Wellbeing, after the town where I was living. And my intention when I first started as a solo general practitioner with a special interest in holistic and integrative medicine, which basically means bridging the gap. Oh dear. I have a chihuahua behind me who's giving a little bit of grief and making a bit of noise. So I'll just bring her here. Hey, are you trying to say something, Missy? Yeah, she sometimes needs a tummy rub to feel calm and get her attention from her mama, which she's got. So yeah, so I basically was in a position 16, 17 years ago when I had been working in general practice and also skin cancer medicine. And I had discovered that I had a curiosity which had been with me from an early age to really look into the why and not just be aware of studies which show this and that. And I was just always curious. I would never just accept things at face value. And I had a connection with my patients wherein I allowed them to see me as a woman, as opposed to just being a doctor. And of course, they treated me as a doctor, and I feel in some ways kind of put me on a pedestal for my opinions. And I derive those opinions from the education that I paid for and put myself through which was driven by my curiosity. And so I had come to this space of being able to claim certification in anti-aging medicine and nutrient therapy because I had undertaken extra studies above and beyond what was needed to just keep your general medical registration going. And that had taken me down a number of paths, including learning about how natural substances could actually be utilized to affect people's mental health and physical health as well, as opposed to purely being dependent upon pharmaceuticals, and lifestyle changes and dietary interventions and specific investigations that were not run of the mill and so therefore would cost the patient more investment than just using the universal insurance scheme that we have in Australia that it's called Medicare. So I guess you would say that my niche was outside of the scope of the traditional general practitioner. And so I came to starting my new business after I had had my third child, who turned 17 in December. So it's that sort of time frame ago. And I called it from a place of innocence, Wingham Wellbeing, because I thought that I had the skills to keep people healthy and well. Little did I recognize at that point in time that healthy, well people don't go to doctors. So it was rather ironic that I called my medical practice Wingham Wellbeing. However, it served the purpose of attracting that particular type of patient who was happy to um, listen and be heard through my curious framework and was interested in complementary therapies and bridging that kind of whole being approach to medicine as opposed to just walking in for a quick fix of a prescription or a medical certificate, etc. I'm not saying that that wasn't a large part of my practice, and I now actually realize with the benefit of 15 years in that practice and 18 months of self-healing, that what I inadvertently created was a culture of codependency wherein my patients would come to me, feel so comfortable in my presence that they would let drop all of their stories and their symptoms and their beliefs. And I was ill-equipped with those tools that I had paid for and learned with the constraints of time to actually offer them true healing. And the reason why I say a cycle of codependency is because they would keep coming back feeling great when they were with me, but then going back into their lives and just repeating the same patterns because the tools that I could administer within the time of the consult were not translatable into actionable changes within their lifestyle that brought about true healing. So once that kind of hit home to me in that was really feeling very unwell myself, I got to the point in my work where I would cry myself on the way to work. I would turn up at the surgery and I would just race through from the back door through to the staff room, and bury myself in the staff room and wash my face, get all the tears away before I could even face the patients. I really knew that like every step was hurting me, and I knew that I was on the wrong path for me, and I needed to just stop. And I did so with a massive amount of guilt. I took a long period of time to heal. And now you can see from my eyes that I still have a little bit of stored energy that needs to release with forgiving myself for putting myself first. But I'm very proud that I did it. I'm very proud that I took that step. It was a difficult step. I don't believe I will ever face such a difficult decision, but I did it. And yeah, I haven't looked back since that point. I have allowed myself to actually learn transformational skills and tools now. And that is why I can call myself now ex-medical doctor. I no longer pay fees to the regulatory bodies in Australia that allow people with all of that learning. And, because it's not just university, it's all of the lived experience. I was a doctor for nearly 30 years. I no longer now pay my upper rego fees. And so I can still claim that title, but I need to make sure that people are aware that nothing that I say in this podcast or evermore can be considered as medical advice. It is purely my lived experience and sharing of stories. And you will see that as a holistic transformation coach, what I encourage is for people to recognize that they actually have so much more awareness and power within themselves, and society and the system does not want them to remember that. So I hope that gives you a bit of an explanation as to who I am and where I've come from.
You are currently working as a transformational holistic coach. Before that, as a medical doctor, and for both careers or vocations, you can say, or one can say that one, you need brains. Two, you need your hands. But thirdly, you need a heart. So for you, when you became a medical doctor in the beginning, what was it that moved not only your mind, your hands, but what was it that pulled your heart into the direction of helping others?
I had always seen myself as being a healer. And I now recognize, because through transformation therapy, we do work with past lives and past generations. And I have had rememberings that disclosed to me that I have always been a healer and a leader. And I was a wise medicine woman, and I have rememberings of being in circle around a fire, and sometimes the word witch comes to my memories. And so it was something innate from within me. And I believe that our souls are on a journey, and we go through these different lifetime iterations of ourselves, and we have particular lessons to learn. And I recognize that healing has been a gift that I have possessed all my life, or my soul has possessed all my lifetimes, and it has been a refinement of that skill in this particular lifetime. So that I wasn't able to put into words until having made the explorations into the somewhat esoteric field of, doing things like women's circles, drum journeys, shamanic healing, these sorts of areas, which I am not trained in, but I have participated in. And I'm very grateful to have been exposed to those modalities, to be able to learn those things about myself, because they certainly weren't consciously stored memories, but they came from my imagination, which is another word for your subconscious, during these states of altered consciousness during participation in ceremony, in sacred seeking healing, seeking connection with self. So I believe that connection with self, the heart, is part of the self. It's this energy center which we sense, and I'm a very big believer in the chakras. Have studied human design, which incorporates the Eastern philosophies of the chakras as being energy centers within ourselves. And I hope that answers your question as to where that came from. I thought that it was always I wanted to be a doctor when I was a little girl. Whenever we would play doctors and nurses, I was always the doctor. But I now recognize that it's a deeper level, that it's the heart is the healer.
So it's not only the heart, but it's the soul that has, I guess, the I don't know. This is something that I'm not really used to, this sort of language and topics, but we're going to keep on going because it's very
Sure.
interesting. So for you, you do become a medical doctor, but you have transformed. You
Mhm.
left that. What was what was the point in your life where you realized that you can use your energy and talent instead of doing the medical doctor practice, instead to focus on helping people to transform holistically?
Well, probably there were two stages to that. The first thing that I recognized was that I was digging myself a hole by staying in the practice of medicine, despite the fact that I had created a medical practice that was highly tuned in with my philosophy of holistic care, incorporating both conventional and non-conventional therapies. But why I say I was digging myself a hole was because despite the fact that I was helping people, or at least I had the perception from the reflection that I was getting back from them that I was helping them, I recognized I wasn't helping myself, in that my own physical and mental wellness was deteriorating, and I kept getting reminders every single day. As I explained about, the crying, and there was also feeling physically sick, and every single step was intense pain for me. And I recognize now that that was literally every action that I was taking me deeper and deeper into that hole. And the way to get out of a hole that you're digging is to stop digging. So that's exactly what I recognized that I needed to do. And I was very supported in that decision. I had one in particular very close friend who is also an ex-medical doctor who lives on the other side of the world over near you. And he too, I had met him back in 2019 when I had started looking into alternatives. And I'll explain that story in a minute. But I had started working with coaches. And I'm very firmly of the belief that you will meet people in your life for a particular lesson that you need to learn from them. And at that moment in time, I was starting to work with a coach, and I would get up very early in the morning and go on calls that fit with the US time and was very early in the morning for Australian time. And on one of the calls, that was a group coaching session, I shared a story which came from an experience that I had had just recently, because one of the areas that I had studied into was the process of methylation. So, methylation is a biochemical process that happens in the body. And it's one of the principles that, if you recognize and you manipulate through vitamin supplementation, you can actually bring about quite dramatic changes in people's symptomatology. And I retold the story during this group coaching call of the sort of powerlessness that I had felt as a medical doctor given that my practice had gotten to the point where I was so full with clients that I couldn't offer help to anyone else. And I had a waiting list for people to come see me, and that waiting list was years long. And when I decided that I would invest into myself to learn different techniques, and that those different techniques involved people investing in themselves because the vitamin products that I was using were very expensive. They cost me a lot of money to bring into the practice. I decided that it was, and I was the only doctor within, a 200-kilometer radius to offer those services. I decided that I would push myself further out of my comfort zone. This was back in 2019, and try and shift my service from being just one-to-one to one-to-many. So I created a new business and had a separate website and started offering my services for people who were seeking those particular services for, especially for vitamins for mental health and nutrient therapy, in particular using sterile vitamins, vitamin C infusions and things like this. And this one thing to do with methylation was this injection that you could have that was called MB12, methylated B12. And for the right individual who at that point in time was super strung out, anxious, overanalyzing everything in their complete environment, feeling disconnected and feeling almost persecuted. So the description that I'm giving, some people may relate to, and they may recognize that that's one of the stages that people might experience when they are going through like a severe anxiety or a schizophrenic type illness. So anyway, I still had an intake process, but the proviso was that people would be accepting this help because they were going to be their own barometer, be their own measure of how the intervention that they could get would be working, and that they would still be keeping their own primary physician. And so this was like an extra service that people could privately access through my website and book. And I provided it in my lunch hour, or kind of squeezed it in between my client patients. So it was like an extra thing on top. So you can kind of see where the burnout was coming from. My intention was to help more people through these amazing nutrient therapies. And anyway, I was retelling the story in this group meeting about how one of my clients had read about this and thought this would be really great for my partner. He's paranoid and all of these things. Well, anyway, she arranged for him. He was very, very fearful, but she arranged for him to come and get the injection. And I didn't actually meet him because this was, the consent form and everything was all, you're taking responsibility for this. If you want it, you can have another one. You can, just keep in touch with your primary physician. This is kind of like sort of like I was being like a dispensary for medicines that I was trained to administer, but I wasn't taking over the care of whoever chose to get it. And anyway, this woman got it for her partner, made the appointment for him. He came in and got it. And I didn't actually get to follow up with her immediately, but I got to follow up with her about 6 weeks later. And I asked her, or it might have been even a little bit longer, and I asked her what had happened. And what it turned out was he had the injection, and within 2 to 3 hours, he was like a new man. He lost all of his heavy anxiety. He came back to being the man that she had fallen in love with before he'd gotten into this state of overanalyzing things and feeling paranoid and all the rest of it. And they had a fantastic time together. For about 2 weeks, they were just doing all of these fun things. And in fact, they went skateboarding, and she fell off her skateboard and broke her arm. And she had to go to hospital to have her fracture operated on and put into the right space. And during that time while she was in hospital, the injection started wearing off, and he started going back into that state of over-analysis and thinking that the world was against him and all of this. These are characteristics of undermethylation. So the injection gave him a big hit of methyl, and when it wore off, his body chewed through it and he went back to his old thinking. And the sad story was that he must have thought something was going on with her. And while she was in hospital because she got delayed, he actually took his own life, thinking whatever he was thinking. But she came home from hospital to find him deceased. And that was a very, very sad story. And I felt immense tragedy in the perception of it all. And as I was retelling the story during this group coaching call, one of the participants reached out to me and said, I think you've got so much to teach me about this field of how nutrients can affect people's psychiatry. And, we should chat some more. And we forged a connection in the chat meeting, in the chat on the Zoom with all of this group stuff going on. And although I didn't continue forward in that, taking the concept of one to many at that point, and perhaps that had to do with that experience that I had with the injection and the tragedy that resulted, but I certainly kept up with the friendship with that beautiful individual who I connected with. And from him, I have learned so much about how the body stores the experiences that we go through in our formative years. And when things are too painful for us in our consciousness, the beautiful thing about the human brain is that we automatically compartmentalize and store these experiences that are too painful for the conscious at that time down into a part of your brain that is called the amygdala. And that then translates into the body. So your body is the vessel that reflects the painful memories and emotions that are stored in the amygdala, so that they don't keep intruding into your consciousness, but you may well perceive a bodily sensation when your amygdala thoughts are firing off. And that is a time when we call ourselves that you are triggered, as it were. And are you familiar with that term, being triggered?
Oh, yes, I am. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was really blessed that at that point when I met my good friend, who I'm still to this day very good friends with, and we support each other each week because there's so many commonalities in our life. He was an ex-doctor who had burnout, and he, physician heal thyself, did attempt to do so and converted his, sort of semi painful injury into a really bad thing that needed surgery by trying to fix himself. And he did that at age 54. And I did it at age 54, so as in left medicine. So we just have a lot of similarities in our lives. And so I feel that there was a natural energetic connection that we were going to meet each other and support each other and teach each other about different aspects of our own perspective of how you can assist people, because we're both natural healers. So so that was definitely one aspect that helped me to pivot out of being a medical doctor. The support that I had with my friend, how I met him, the journey with regards to learning about nutrients and how they can support people's mental health. But it also brought home the very, very big thing that you're great while you're taking them, but as soon as you stop taking them, you feel like shit. So that was a message that I actually got reinforced to myself as well. And because physician heal thyself, when I learn all about mental health support using nutrients, I had a very well-meaning doctor colleague who I stayed with when I did the initial training, and she said to me, "Oh, well, you're a doctor," because I, had labels all through my career attributed to me. You're a doctor, you'll just be an undermethylator. Just take Sammy and you'll be fine. Those were her exact words to me. Back in around about 2016, I think. And then I went on to do the training, which doctors from America would come out and teach us how to do it. And I was on SAMe and I felt amazing, much like that guy after his injection. Just all of the overthinking and things all went away. My brain was clear. I had plenty of energy. And then all of a sudden I didn't. And I was still taking the SAMe. So what had happened was my taking of the supporting the methylation had then allowed other conditions to unmask. And I had a condition which I learned about during my training, which is called pyroluria. And pyroluria is if you look it up in Wikipedia, it's a pseudoscience type condition. And I love those ones because that basically is code for not accepted by the establishment, mainly because there's no profits to be made by Big Pharma. Nothing patentable because these are all natural substances. Doesn't mean nothing to be made money-wise, because to get the concoctions of vitamins that doctors who are trained in this modality will prescribe for you, they give a prescription to a pharmacist, and that compounding pharmacist makes up these big bottles of pills and stuff. And so when I was trained in this, and after I unmasked my pyroluria, I recognized I really needed to go on these other supplements. So I started taking them and increasing the dose, and I had up to 14 pills that I would take each day. And they came in these big jars. You had to keep them in the fridge. Otherwise, opening the lid off them, the smell would just knock your socks off. And refrigerating them slightly reduced that smell down a bit. And so I would be taking those pills. And I got to the point where I was actually just eating so that I could take my supplements, like forcing myself to be in this place that was keeping my mental health at this sort of balanced level. But I also recognized that from thinking back to how my energy was then versus now, I was go, 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 just doing so many things on the run. And patients would often say to me, "How do you keep up? Your brain just goes so quick." And just multitasking and flipping from this topic to this topic and back and forth. They would often ask to record their consultations, and at the meantime I was actually typing notes. And so I recognized that all of this alternative supplementation, using what I thought was better than pharmaceuticals to balance and support my mental health, was actually just putting me into this cycle of being dependent upon my supplements. Because what would happen would be I'd forget to eat, forget to have my supplements, and I would feel my mood dip down. I would become very emotional. And so it was in about I'd say around about 2020 or 2021, the way that I was able to keep up this fast-paced multitasking, full books patients, lots of complex chronic disease management, and also listening to people, but from, not able to do true transformation therapy, but ticking their boxes and, giving them preventative care, proactive visits, etc. I also had a membership system within my medical practice. But anyway, the only way we could keep it sustained was I had other people working with me. I had a health promotion nutritionist, I had a counselor, I had a chiropractor, I had, 3 or 4 receptionists. I had this awesome right-hand woman who was my medical technician, and she would actually kind of synthesize why people were acutely presenting and direct me as to where I would take my questioning. So people wouldn't come and just see me, they would see the whole team. So I built up this practice that was really, I felt, very supportive. But when push came to shove, it all hinged around me being there. So anyway, one time when we closed for 3 weeks at the end of the year, which was the only way to keep it sustainable, over the Christmas break, everybody, well, you just can't get sick during this time, or, you seek elsewhere help, which was fine because that I was a solo GP. It was the acceptable thing to keep the business model going. My nutritionist sent me a message during her rest time because she knew all about this pyroluria and the nutrient therapy. And we also used to change people's diets, things like gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, yada, 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 intermittent fasting, etc. Anyway, she introduced me to this concept called root cause protocol. Have you ever heard of root cause protocol?
What is that?
Well, it is a freely available resource on the internet that she came across just by being curious. And it was gifted to this guy who started a Facebook group called the Magnesium Advocacy Group. And through his own curiosity and research, noticing that in populations around the world, he was an epidemiologist, or still is, sorry, still alive. And he noticed that in populations around the world where they had a high percentage of blood donors, whole blood donors, not plasma, don't get me started on that, they had a much lower incidence of chronic disease. So he looked into the physiology behind this and found that the answer is in the iron. So when you see iron in the environment, what do you almost invariably see happening to the iron right beside it?
No idea. What?
Rust?
Rust. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So rust is iron oxide. It's corroded iron. It's iron that has been exposed to oxygen. Now, in our body, inside our cells, we have iron as part of this molecule called hemoglobin, and its primary function is to carry oxygen around the body. So, what do you think happens to our iron in our body?
It rusts
It
out of,
rusts.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So Morley came up with this hypothesis that how amazing would it be if at the simple root cause of disease in our bodies could be our iron rusting? And he looked further into this and elucidated the physiology that goes on. And it turns out that he's onto something. And what that is that for our iron to be usable to take up oxygen, our body exerts a certain amount of energy to make it into the reduced form. So change it from iron 3 plus into iron 2 plus. And that takes energy, and energy called ATP in our body, it needs magnesium as a cofactor. So, this concept of iron deficiency is actually iron inefficiency because we are magnesium deficient. And then when you look back through history and you start to hear and research about healers, and you look into naturopathy and chiropractic and all of these alternative practices, the one supplement that they consistently recommend for people is magnesium. And the reason why is because it's the essential factor for our currency of energy production. So that was number one rule of the root cause protocol. Everyone is magnesium deficient, and there are so many symptoms of magnesium deficiency that we just think of as being tired. And that's the reason why, because we require energy to de-rust our iron and allow it to take oxygen around our body. And the other thing is not all magnesiums are created the same. If you go to the supermarket and purchase magnesium, you'll get a really good laxative. So, most people don't need, well, most people are full of shit, so it's probably a little bit helpful, but that was the number one rule: magnesium, magnesium, magnesium. The number two rule is way more tricky to achieve, and that is to learn to let things go, to not take things so personally. At the time when something happens, actually pause and allow yourself to just say, hold on a second, what someone says is way more about where they are at than a reflection upon me. And that was the most profound lesson and learning that I got from the root cause protocol. There is a whole protocol behind it, and people can look it up if they want to go to it. It's rcp123.org. And I have no financial affiliation with that at all. I make no money. It's from sharing that, it's just something that really assisted me. And when my nutritionist shared that with me, I'm like, oh my God, you're telling me all of these vitamins that I've been taking, etc., are actually keeping me sick, keeping me in this loop. And it was such an aha moment. It was such an eye opener. And I just looked at the videos and watched things and went, gosh, this makes so much sense. And of course, I share this with my colleagues and they say, oh, what's the evidence for this? And oh, they miss large sections of this. And the reason why they dismiss it, are so quick to dismiss it, is because it potentially dismisses their role in the whole shebang. And that was the point at which I recognized that we're in the instant information age at the moment. God gave us all beautiful brains. If you choose to use your brain with curiosity, you can, using the instant information age, find so much information that's out there. And if you really tune in to your heart and you feel with resonance what resonates with you, then you can find your own path out there with the instant information age. And then that took me to the next thing that, well, perhaps I've actually got all the answers within me. And perhaps I could tune into my body and listen to what it's telling me. And maybe that will guide me in the path that I need to take to be honoring my higher self's most energetic, purest form. And that all happened, a few years ago, and started me thinking that, wow, I really am not actually helping people to help themselves. I'm helping people to feel safe in my presence, but it's not getting translated into actually healing. Maybe they don't want to heal. Maybe there's a secondary gain for keeping them in the place where they are. And that is so true. There are so many people in this world, especially overrepresented in those that choose to seek advice, etc., from health professionals, that probably would lose their identity completely if they didn't have that label or, diagnosis. I'm referring to people who are so deep in despair that, they live at the doctors, they're there regularly getting sick. Well, what is your body actually trying to tell you? And so that sort of resonated with me and made me think, well, if I'm coming to this learnings and lessons, and it's not from paying money to go to a, continuing professional development course. By the way, that's an interesting point, and I'd love to just share that. CPD, continuing professional development, in Australia, I'm not sure if it's the same world over, but doctors and other health professionals have to meet a certain number of points each year. And as a doctor, if you want to not have to pay for it, you go along to these sessions that are provided by, guess who sponsors them? Pharmaceutical companies. So I like to call CPD continuing pharma dependence, unless you choose to pay for it yourself. And then you just go down another route that you're paying money into to learn more things about, when the reality is you have a brain within you. And the instant information age means YouTube University. You've got so many people out there who are sharing. And, if you use your energy and you are discerning about it, then you can find what feels right for you. And then rather than trusting their opinion, because let's face it, opinions are like assholes, we've all got one. But rather you use your body as a barometer and you think to yourself, well, I've got this issue, okay? Rather than trying to put a diagnosis on it, look to what part of your body is being affected or what thought process is going on. And then think about the scenarios in which you're aware of it, and you'll start to see patterns. And you work out this hypothesis, and then thinking like a scientist, you think, okay, well, I'm taking note of it. I'll give myself a score as to how often it is or how distressing it is for me. And I'll go looking for some suggestions, and I'll pick one and I'll try it out for myself, and I'll compare myself now versus after the intervention. And there we are doing personalized medicine with a randomized control trial with yourself being the control, N equals 1, and you're getting some really valid results for yourself. And that intervention doesn't necessarily have to be a supplement. It might be a practice like Qigong or yoga or mindfulness or some kind of stretching routine or some kind of weights lifting or a change in your diet, or it can be so many things that will epigenetically influence you. Okay, because our brain cannot tell the difference between our thoughts and reality, because our brain is this powerful supercomputer that is linked in with our soul that guides us in this lifetime. How blessed are we that we have one?
Dr. Jen, what are you most passionate about with what you're doing today?
What I'm most passionate about now is people owning their own shit, to recognize that by diving deep and looking inwards, feeling inwards, they are most likely to recognize that everything around them, like we are the center of our own universe, but we are also one tiny part of the entire universe. Everything is interconnected. So I'm most passionate about people's energies and remembering and unlearning all of the principles that are indoctrinated into our existence as members of society. And I'm especially passionate about it now because I believe that we are in a time of transformation, and that there are those amongst us whose time is up. We have just short times left on this planet. The statistics are showing massive decimations of population across the world. Things like massive increases in excess death rates in countries, percentages getting up towards 20% above what was expected. Everyone will be noticing that their insurance premiums have suddenly taken a massive hike, 20 to 30% up in recent times. The reason why is because by design, our population is shrinking. So those of us that are still here and have a voice and have an awareness need to become leaders in our areas, not to encourage people to step into the fear and think that this is an inevitability, that they have no power to claim and influence at all, but to recognize that if they can see through the noise and they can see above and see further and beyond, then they have a duty to use their voices and express that to the general populace so that they can reclaim the power that they have unwittingly given away. And I believe that I used to believe that society would keep us safe. I now believe that completely the opposite is true. And so I'm what some people refer to as a conspiracy theorist. I prefer to say that I am a realist, and that, there needs to be more conspiracy theories because all of the ones we've had so far have turned out to be proven true. So I believe that there are only two directions in this world, inwards and outwards. And I'm passionate about people recognizing that Where their attention goes, their energy flows, and that society encourages you to be distracted. And while you are distracted, you are not doing your inner work and reconnecting with what is your soul's journey? What is your purpose in life? What are the lessons that you can learn to create a ripple effect out from around you and positively influence not only yourself, but the lives that you come into contact with? We all have immense power within ourselves. And, if someone listening to this just recognizes that they have been outsourcing their entire life and that what they can choose to do in that split second moment of aha is start to insource, then I would love to support you in that. And that's probably a good opportunity to mention the book that I have sitting on my computer in front of me, which is, I'd say 70% completed. I'm just going through all of the chapters to put in some pauses and some reflections so that it can actually become a manual to assist people in challenging the things that are coming into their aura. And, we actually like to think that we make decisions logically, don't you? Do you think you make decisions logically, Ryan?
Of course I do.
So why is it that in marketing they teach about pulling at people's heartstrings, engaging with people's primal urges? I mean, what is it that they say? Sex sells.
Yeah.
Is that a logical thing?
No.
Or is that an energetic thing?
Very.
So yeah, very energetic. And so the powers that be and the marketing magnets and the media, etc., all recognize that people are primates with less hair. So we have primitive urges and we have basic needs that need to be fulfilled. We need to feel safe and control. We need also to be challenged and to have change in our lives. We also need to feel like we matter. And we also need love and connection. And if we've got all four of those needs, then we might actually talk about expanding our souls and contributing to society. So I love to speak to people who are at that fifth level. But even people who are at that fifth level often will have stories within that they're telling themselves about themselves, locked in this self-judgment, locked in that pattern that I mentioned about beforehand, about the ego sitting on top of the amygdala and keeping all of those stored traumas in there, and they sneak out every now and again when we're triggered. And think about those moments as being gifts to recognize what parts within you still need to shift from that lower vibrational energy of stored emotions, emotion meaning energy that needs to move. Allow it to move, allow it to flow through you, and then you are left, because energy can neither be created nor destroyed. You get left with a lesson, which, if you say that then out aloud, then you are crafting your own and creating your own reality. And that is just such a wonderment. That's what I'm really passionate about.
Oh.
Choosing your words carefully. So, yeah.
A few moments ago, you were saying where energy goes, energy flows.
Where
Um,
attention goes,
oh,
energy
where?
flows. Yeah,
Let
yeah.
me
And
take.
that's not my saying. That's not my
Uh,
saying.
okay, let me take that from the top. So earlier you were saying where attention goes, energy flows. Very
Yes,
powerful words of wisdom that you shared with us there.
yes.
Um, my question for you is because there was a time where, you're going to work, you're doing the routines, but also you mentioned there were times where you're on the commute, you're crying, or there's something
Mm,
there.
mm.
During those moments, where was your attention? And when those tears were coming, where was that energy going?
Yeah, well, my attention was thinking forward to all of the people that I would be seeing in my practice and feeling like I was stuck and that there was nobody else who I could count on to support me because I was in that place at that present time where I knew I wasn't serving my higher self's best interest. So my attention was actually thinking about attracting someone to come in and to take over the practice. And I was shrinking myself down and I wasn't doing a very good job at all of attracting. So I didn't invest into sharing what I was doing and publicizing because I was in the fear of a registered medical doctor. And in Australia, we have laws with this body of registration that we belong to that keep you small. You mustn't try and differentiate yourself from any other doctor. If you do, then you're breaching this good code of medical conduct. So my attention was in that sphere of being stifled in that place. And therefore, my energy was just recycling within me, and I was feeling frustrated. And those were tears of frustration. And I was stagnating. I was absolutely stagnating in that environment. So where my energy went was into my patients, and there was none left for me. So, yeah,
You're
that's what was
giving,
going on back then.
you've been giving so much attention and energy towards your patients, which is a beautiful thing. However, there's also a need to look at oneself and take care of oneself, to love
Mm,
oneself.
mm.
How did it look to what changed? What changed?
Time and also recognizing that I was worth shifting my focus. I was worth bringing my attention back to myself. My body was screaming at me by the time I left medicine. It had been whispering for years with the symptoms that I was having, that I was mitigating with supplements and then with root cause protocol, with magnesium and learning to let things go. And finally, it was just time. And one day, actually, how it happened was I had been trying and trying and trying to advertise and put the business for sale and, had given my staff notice that it was happening. And then one day, I had an appointment with um, not a financial, yeah, a financial advisor, say a financial advisor. I left early for the day and I recognized about that hole that I was digging that it was just going to keep getting deeper and deeper until I stopped digging. And I just needed to. I had already downscaled. I'd gone from 5 days a week down to 4 days a week, but I was still on call 24/7. And there just wasn't any time for me. And I decided to actually listen to my body and listen to the signals that it was giving me. And I read this amazing book called The Secret Language of Your Body by Ina Segal. And I knew that there was only so many hours within the day. And even though I can bend time,
Mhm.
I wasn't bending it for myself. I wasn't allowing myself to value myself sufficiently that I could actually give value to others. So I needed to shift my level of values perception. And I needed a complete break before I could reestablish good boundaries, good self care practices that honored me as, the only vessel I have in this lifetime is this body. It was wearing out before my eyes, and I had the supports around me. So I just did not go back to work. I said, that's it. This is my business. It's my show. I can do what I want. Yes, I've got 10 staff dependent upon me. Yes, I've got almost 1,000 patients. They'll live. They'll survive without me, but I don't think that I'll survive without me. So it was a sudden decision, but it had been a long time coming. And I decided that I was worth it.
And when did you have that realization that you're worth it?
During that call with the financial advisor, during that actual call, I recognized that the pain wasn't going to go away until I actually made drastic change. And that, it was insanity to expect a different result if I kept doing the same things. And that I would have a certain amount of guilt, and I would move through those stages of grieving through doing it, but that nothing was going to shift in my vibrational presence until I listened to all of the signs that the universe, my body, was giving me. That sure, you may well be at the top of your game and excellent, etc., in what you are doing, but if you can see the futility of what you are doing, and I was just keeping people locked in that system of codependence. And I say codependency because, of course, the better that they would do, the better that would make me feel. But I still recognized it was just a temporary fix. That the people who truly were healed weren't seeing me. And I really wanted to assist people in getting to that point. And that meant that I had to do it for myself.
And
Yeah,
earlier,
lead by example.
yeah, earlier you said that I think during this time of shifting to this new journey that you're in, um, that you had heard that your body had been screaming at you. I don't know what
Mm.
exactly your body was saying, if there were any words or maybe just thoughts, but today, does your body scream at you, or how does your body express itself to your mind?
It whispers now. And when it whispers, I listen. So, for example, I will sometimes have a feeling across my trapezius that is of tightness. And I interpret that you need to take a break and, go and do some stretching, go have a walk, drink some water. Like I just listen to it. I listen to the messages that it gives me. Sometimes I will experience a feeling around my jaw, and I recognize that is an alarm that I took on board from an incident that happened when I was 12 years old. And that reminds me of my 12-year-old younger self and the stories around that, which I've now really moved through and have forgiven, and myself and all of the people that were involved in that story at that time. So I don't pathologize things. I resist the medical indoctrination to be thinking, oh, it's a torn muscle or it's a sore tooth or just because it's in that area. I sometimes think energetically that, like a sensation around here, the throat chakra. Is there something that I'm not saying that I need to say? So I just have shifted my perspective into that of the indoctrinated doctor into being the more aware, open individual who thinks about your body as an expression of your subconscious. And that's a shift that anyone can make if they have the curiosity and the desire to form their own beliefs about the world, not that is forced upon us through seeking outsourcing for seeking opinions.
So chemicals, they have their place. I'm not gonna really get into if I'm pro or con with pills and things like that. However, you know more about this than I do, so I'll be asking you, uh, for a person who is just so maybe we can say addicted, or they just feel trapped in this loop, this cycle of every fucking day, got to take the same fucking meds. Then the next week, okay, got to buy it again, get the insurance involved, and again and again and again. This whole cycle. Um, like I said, it might have its place. I'm not going to say how my thoughts are, but you mentioned something about forgiving oneself, about that grace to your body of listening deeply and putting energy, love energy, I guess, into that place where your body is calling. So my question for you is, do how powerful is forgiveness? How powerful is it?
Well, I think that's a rhetorical question, really, because you just look at Jesus Christ and God. You know, if people who have a Christian faith believe that their sins are forgiven by Christ dying on the cross for that, that is such power of belief. And have a look at the evidence that is now published and the well-known effects of the placebo effect and the nocebo effect. It's some studies quote at 50% of a placebo effect, that if you believe that you are going to get better by taking this sugar pill, then you will. If you believe that forgiving and integrating the energies within yourself, then you will be going a long way towards. But in terms of towards achieving that, but in terms of actually measuring it, that's not my area of study and quantification, etc. I only have my lived experience, and all I would say to your listeners is give it a go and trust yourself to tune in to yourself. Don't ask for others' opinions. Just open your mind to considering that there is a possibility that you can influence within the universe, because we are all energetic beings. We will be attracted to those others that increase our vibration, good vibes.
Mhm.
That means that when our frequencies interact, there is a resonance and an increasing, that a raising of vibration. So forgiveness has a frequency similar to love.
Or, or, or,
So,
or, or just for a moment, if I can rephrase it just a little bit, just to maybe
yeah, okay,
clarify,
that would be better. Yeah.
how transformational is it instead of just taking this damn pill all the time and not really addressing, okay, maybe there's some place in your body where you might have had a trauma and your body is telling you, but you're taking this pill.
Mm.
For some people, the idea is, well, I'm taking the pill, that's already enough. But then you're bringing this up about the power of forgiveness. So, like, my question now that I'm trying to rephrase it is, how much of a transformation do you see when you take that step of forgiveness, like on a personal level? If
Yeah, well,
that's, I hope,
my
yeah.
lived experience is I now no longer take any supplements unless I choose to experience what that supplement is doing for me with an experimental, curious brain, because I feel that I am enough, and I recognize that symptoms are actually signals that the body is trying to take itself back into homeostasis. We need to get out of our own way. When you're taking that pill, you're actually blocking your body's ability to self heal. We have so much potential within ourselves through our intention, through our energies, through our essence. And the majority of people who engage within the healthcare system, I call it the industrial medical complex, will be looking for a quick fix. And if you are expecting that quick fix and you are taking a pill and you recognize that, well, I've just got to keep taking that pill, are you happy to be controlled by that? I mean, there is such a thing as free will. And if your free will, when you are taking the pill, if you suspect that perhaps it's keeping you in a loop, just consider the possibility that you actually do have the power to pick the toboggan up and take a different route down the hill and still end up at the same destination. But of course, I said at the beginning, I cannot give medical advice, and I am in no way, shape, or form recommending that people just jump off their pills. If you're already on a pill, then someone prescribed it for you for a reason. Speak with whoever is that someone that prescribed it. And, doctors are quite open-minded to people choosing to alter their medication, the majority of doctors. Some with such an ego wherein they are indoctrinated that, if you don't take this, then something bad's going to happen. Well, they are feeling like their worth is tied in to that role and that paradigm. And even when it comes to diagnoses and testing and things like that, someone's got to literally choose and opt in to that system to participate. So therefore, everything that's measured within that system is going to be biased because it's only people who choose to participate in that system. So if you do find yourself already wrapped up in that system, and you think that perhaps I could do things differently, although I've been speaking to you about an aha moment, and it did eventually, when the crunch came, happen all of a sudden, it had been building for such a long time. So we have these sort of slow moving processes in our body, and then we have acute things. And that is something that I really do want to draw a distinction to, that if your body is giving you signals that make you feel acutely uncomfortable and that you're fearful you might harm yourself, or, that's the one area where modern medicine can intervene and save lives quickly. I'm not all about dissing the entire medical fraternity because it has got a role, but I'm talking about with chronic niggling patterns that you recognize within yourself. There is an alternative way of healing, and that doesn't mean going to an alternative healer. That means insourcing and listening to your body and doing a little bit of research using the internet and the information age, and thinking outside the box about, what are the patterns that I'm noticing within this. Kind of put yourself out of your body, looking at yourself, and be honest about what is it that you're actually observing and how might you choose to rewrite that story. And yeah, so that's basically the reason why I wrote a book, which I have entitled Unpatient: How to Stop Outsourcing Your Healing and Rebuild Self-Trust in a World that, let's face it, profits from your disconnection. And in that book, I speak about exactly this process that I've been sharing with you. So, yeah.
You did mention a book. You did mention a title. Is this the final title or is this still a work in
It's
progress?
the working title, but I'm definitely going to keep some of the words within there that I have made up. Like, it's not inpatient, it's unpatient,
Oh, unpatient.
because a healed patient is no longer a patient. So we might as well call them an unpatient.
Okay. And where will this book be available?
So I will be, this will be an ebook. So it will be available directly through a link off my website, and it will more than likely be wellbeingholistic.net/book. So, yes, or Unpatient. Haven't quite decided yet, but as I mentioned, it's about 70% done. It's my job for the weekend to complete. And yeah, and I will be sharing it on social media. And now that I have overcome my fear of being seen, that was part of the journey as well that we didn't get to. But yes, it's yes, I'm recognizing that I don't need to approach publishers or anything like that because, technology is such an amazing gift that we can bend it to our will and we can reach so many people just through using our voice and not being afraid to be seen and to speak up. And so I'm incredibly grateful for you to have had me on your podcast. And I also will echo what I said originally when I found you and shared that how brave are you to be putting yourself out there and jumping ship from your career just so that you can get the message to people who choose to listen to you and who are energetically drawn to you. And that is fantastic, Ryan. Hats off to you.
And now you're gonna make me cry. So, um,
There must
okay.
be some energy there that needs to move.
And if people want to work with you, do you have any any way for people to work with you for
Sure, of course.
transformational coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is wellbeingholistic.net, and I'm sure that you'll have that in the show notes so that people can find that. And if they go to that website, there's a big flashy button that says book free quantum call. So a free quantum call is a 40-minute session with me during which we go through finding exactly where you are at, and I get a very quick feeling as to whether I can help someone or not. Our vibes will either enhance each other or not. And I also put a lot of free content out there on social media. So people can find me on social media under my name, Jen Draper, or Wellbeing Holistic. Both of those pages are there on TikTok. Sorry, it's just Jen Draper on TikTok, YouTube, Wellbeing Holistic, Facebook, Jen Draper and Wellbeing Holistic, Instagram, Jen Draper, or Dr. Jen Wellbeing Holistic, and LinkedIn as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jen, for sharing so much wisdom with us today. And to wrap this up, I have a question that I ask all of my guests, and I'm going to ask you that same question. And that is, Dr. Jen, what is your truth that heals?
My truth that heals is that people have all the power that they need to heal themselves within themselves. They just need to look inwards to find it and trust that they can. That's
Thank
it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And to the listeners, please like this episode, share, subscribe, and also listen on, if you're listening on Spotify, please feel free to give a review. Hopefully it's a nice one, and I will be leaving all the links in the show notes so you can go and support Dr. Jen. And if you would like to support my channel, and if you if you would like to buy me a coffee, please feel free to go ahead and buy me one or two at buymeacoffee.com/truth.h7. And again, Dr. Jen, thank you so much for sharing not only your story, but also sharing your positive energy with us here on the Truth That Heals podcast.
You are welcome, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.